I wonder if they knew it. It was Magellan who named the ocean before them Pacifico, which we call the Pacific. It means peaceful. The wide open waters appear much calmer and more peaceful than the tortuous channel that they had just passed through. However, peaceful is hardly the best word to describe the rest of the journey. Magellan had no idea how far he was from reaching any land at all across the Pacific. Unknown to him, the Pacific covers one-third of the Earth's surface, is more than 33 million square miles. Though Magellan was headed in the right direction to find the Spice Islands, he greatly underestimated how long it would take him to get there. For his mistake, he and his crewmen would suffer greatly. First, the fleet ran out of fresh food. This resulted in the spread of scurvy, the disease that comes from not having enough vitamin C. Scurvy leads to swelling of the gums and making eating almost impossible. In time, it makes the body lose skin and deteriorate. Then, the fleet ran out of dried foods. Then, they ran out of rats to eat. Then, they resorted to eating sawdust and leather just to stay alive. What little water they had was discolored and tainted. In January, the crew found two deserted islands where there were crabs and other sea creatures to eat, but by then a large number of men had already starved to death or died of scurvy. Antonio Pigafetta wrote this in his diary. We were 3 months and 20 days without getting any kind of fresh food. We ate biscuit, which was no longer biscuit, but powders of biscuits, swarming with worms, for they had eaten the food. It stank strongly of the urine of rats. We drank yellow water that had been putrid from many days. We've also eaten some ox hides and sawdust from the boards. Finally, on March 6th, after 98 days straight on the ocean, Magellan and his ships reached the Marianas, a small group of islands just east of the Philippines. Can you even imagine the sight of land on that day? Can you imagine the men falling to their knees and kissing the ground? Can you imagine them eating real food after having had nothing but sawdust and rats to eat? Of the 270 men who started on the incredible journey, only 150 had made it to that point. At least 20 men perished from starvation just before crossing the Pacific. As great as landfall was, something awful was yet in store. Upon reaching the Philippines, Magellan made a mistake that would cost him his life. After converting a local chief to Christianity, we know him as Raho Mabon, Magellan joined him in a fight against another tribe, the tribe of Lapu-Lapu. It was foolish to get involved in a battle that wasn't his, but Magellan had bonded with the leader. Caught up in this civil war, Magellan and about 40 of his men were attacked on the beach. Magellan himself was speared to death and left dead in the surf. Antonio Pigafetta recorded this in his diary. The words in bracket are the author's. An Indian hurled a bamboo spear into the Captain General's face. They all hurled themselves upon him. Magellan turned back many times to see whether we were all in the boats. They caused the Captain General to fall face downwards, when immediately they rushed upon him with iron and bamboo spears, until they killed our mirror, our light, our comfort, and our true guide. Thereupon, beholding him dead, we, wounded, retreat as best as we could to the boats, which were already pulling off. Ferdinand Magellan died on April 27, 1521, before ever seeing the Spice Islands. He never knew that his name would be despised among the Filipinos, nor did he know that his name would be great in the West. Magellan never knew that at least one of his ships would continue to sail all the way around the world and forever change history. In the meantime, the San Antonio drifted back to Spain in disgrace. Remember, the San Antonio was a ship that abandoned the Armada de Molucca when it came time to sail through the Strait of Magellan. Members of the San Antonio returned to Spain full of lies to cover up their desertion. To them, the expedition had failed. Friends and family concluded that they will never see the rest of the Armada again, but they were wrong. Back in the Philippines, the remaining crew scrambled for their own safety. After much disagreement between the sailors, 3 men were chosen as captains, but it was Juan Sebastian Elcano, the captain of the Victoria, who would unofficially take charge. He had tough shoes to fill. Juan Sebastian Elcano was faced with the fact that Magellan, their brilliant leader, was dead, and the Filipinos had all turned against them. He took charge of the men who were left, and they fled back to the sea. For months, these three ships sailed around the islands of Indonesia under the direction of one Elcano. The crewmen saw many new and amazing things. They saw tamed elephants, pearls the size of eggs, and spectacles, which were only just getting popular in Europe. But maneuvering through the islands was tricky with so few men, so Elcano and his crew abandoned the worm-infested Concepcion and burned it. The Trinidad and the Victoria became their new homes. Finally, on November 6, 1521, the Trinidad and the Victoria reached the Spice Islands. With 115 men, two of the five ships that started the voyage had actually reached their destination. Pigafetta wrote, "So we thank God, and for joy we discharged all our artillery. And no wonder we were so joyful, for we had spent 27 months, less 2 days, in our search for the Moluccas." The trip across the Indian Ocean proved almost as dangerous as the trip across the Pacific. You see, Elcano couldn't sail the Victoria safely near the coast of India or Africa because of hostile traders. The Arabs and the Portuguese ruled those water routes like pirates. Elcano was forced to steer the Victoria far out into the Indian Ocean for 10,000 miles. In doing so, once again the sailors suffered. Food rations were short, and the men had to battle again with scurvy. By May 1522, the Victoria finally rounded the Cape of Good Hope, with little but rice to eat. 20 more men died of starvation before the ship landed at Cape Verde Islands. To protect the valued cargo, 13 crewmen were left behind at that point, and the ship sailed on. Finally, on September 6, 1522, almost exactly 3 years since their departure, the Victoria arrived in Spain. With tattered sails and half-starved men, the Armada de Molucca arrived home. Of the original 270-man crew, only 18 weather-beaten sailors pulled into port that day. Though barely alive, these skeleton-sized men had much to tell. To some degree, Juan Sebastian Elcano was rewarded during his lifetime for his heroic efforts. After all, he was the one who navigated the Victoria back home. It was 15 times farther than Columbus's first trip to the New World. Elcano had officially circumnavigated the globe. That means he circled it. And Elcano was the one who brought to Spain a wealthy cargo of cloves. There was quite a celebration for that. But over time, Elcano's faith faded. When he tried a second time to circumnavigate the globe, he died crossing the Pacific Ocean. As for the Trinidad, the ship started to leak at the Spice Islands. After repairs were made, it set sail again, but the ship chose to head east with its cargo, returning the way it came. That proved to be a bad decision. The Trinidad never made it back to Spain. It faced terrible storms and was attacked by the Portuguese. Its cargo, full of precious cloves, sank to the bottom of the sea. The ship splintered into driftwood, never to sail again. Historians today can't help but give a lot of credit to Ferdinand Magellan. He was a brilliant navigator and a fine leader. He was certainly persistent in following his dream and making it happen, but historians are inaccurate when they say that he circumnavigated the world. For one, Magellan never planned to. Second, he only made it halfway around the world before his tragic death. But it had not been for Magellan, Juan Elcano and the Victoria would never have accomplished what they did. In my opinion, Magellan, Juan Elcano, and the other 17 survivors of the Victoria all deserve credit for their first ever navigation of the globe. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and what's wrong? Oh, nothing. Anyways, bye!